A home is supposed to be a safe place, a fortress against the world. But when my stepson knocked on my door at midnight lost and broken, I let him in. I offered him tea and comfort, a soft place to land. And somewhere between the quiet kitchen talks and the ghosts of his childhood that haunted the hallways, I realized a terrible truth. I hadn't let in a lost boy. I had let in a fire. And I was cold, and I was tired, and I wanted to burn. The knock on the door was a violence against the silence. It was nearly midnight, and the only sound in the house was the quiet hum of the central air and the rustle of pages as I turned a book I wasn't reading. My husband Thomas was a specter who haunted the first-class lounges of international airports. His presence in our home was marked only by the monthly arrival of his Amex bill and the faint lingering scent of his cologne on his side of the closet. I had grown accustomed to the quiet, or rather I had become numb to it, so when the knock came sharp and insistent, my heart seized in my chest. I set my book aside, my body moving with a caution born of years of solitude. Through the peephole, a figure stood cloaked in shadow on the porch, his shoulders slumped under the hood of a dark sweatshirt. My hand trembled slightly as I undid the deadbolt. Daniel. He looked up and the porch light carved deep shadows under his eyes. He looked wrecked, not just tired, but hollowed out as if some vital part of him had been scooped away. He was 29, a man I had known since he was a resentful 15-year-old, and yet I had never seen him look so utterly defeated. "Caroline?" He breathed, his voice rough. "Sorry it's so late. I didn't know where else to go. Get in here." I said, my voice softer than I intended. I stepped back and he moved past me into the foyer, bringing a gust of cold, damp air with him. He dropped a duffel bag to the floor. It landed with the heavy final sound of surrender. "Long drive," he muttered, not looking at me. "Work thing went south. I just started driving." "Well, you're here now," I said, closing and locking the door. The sound of the bolt sliding home, feeling strangely significant. "Are you hungry, thirsty?" "Tea?" he asked, his voice small, almost boyish. "If it's not too much trouble." "Never," I said, leading him toward the kitchen. It was our ritual born from the early difficult years of my marriage to his father. I was the interloper, the new wife, and he was the wounded son of a broken home. Tea was our neutral ground, a silent truce offered in steaming mugs across the kitchen table. He'd bring me his teenage problems, a bad grade, a fight with a friend, and I would listen, offering quiet support, never trying to be the mother he had lost, but simply a safe harbor. Tonight the dynamic felt dangerously the same, yet utterly different. He was no longer a boy with boyish problems. He was a man, and his pain was a palpable entity in the room. As I filled the kettle, I watched him sink onto a stool at the island, his head in his hands. "It's all just a sham, you know," he said into his palms, his voice muffled. "The job, the apartment, the whole I've got it all together act. It's exhausting." I placed a mug of chamomile tea in front of him. "You don't have to act here." He looked up, his eyes raw with a pain that made my chest ache. "That's why I came. This is the only place that doesn't feel like a performance." We sat in silence for a long time after that. He told me about being overlooked for a partnership at his architectural firm, about the crushing loneliness of his city apartment, about a deep, pervasive feeling that he had taken a wrong turn somewhere in his life and didn't know how to get back on track. As he spoke, my hand moved seemingly of its own accord to cover his on the cool marble countertop. "It's okay to not be okay, Daniel," I whispered. He turned his hand over and laced his fingers with mine. His grip was firm, desperate. It wasn't the hand of a boy seeking comfort. It was the hand of a man clinging to a lifeline. A jolt went through me, sharp and clean and terrifying. It was a feeling so foreign, so long forgotten, that for a moment I couldn't identify it. Then I realized what it was. it was a spark. In the deep, quiet, numb darkness of my life, it was a spark. And instead of pulling away, I held on tighter. I showed him to the guest room, the room that had once been his. I fluffed the pillows and found him an old t-shirt of his father's to sleep in. As he stood in the doorway, he looked at me, his gaze so intense, it felt like a physical touch. "Thank you, Caroline," he said, "for everything. Get some rest," I replied, my voice a little breathless. I retreated to my own room, to the cold, empty expanse of the bed I shared with a ghost. But I couldn't sleep. My hand still tingled from his touch. The house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was a silence that held a secret. A silence that was alive. The next morning I found him in the library, staring out the large bay window at the rain-slicked garden. He was showered, dressed in the wrinkled clothes from the day before, but the haunted look was still in his eyes. "Thomas called," I said, handing him a mug of coffee. My husband's name felt strange in my mouth, the name of a character in a play I was no longer sure I was a part of. "He's extending his trip. Another week." Daniel took the mug, his fingers brushing mine. The contact was brief, but it sent that same dangerous current through me. "Of course he is," he said, a bitter edge to his voice. "The empire doesn't run itself, don't?" I said softly. "Why not?" He turned to face me, his expression clouded. "Why do we all pretend he's not a husband? He's not a father. He's a CEO who visits his family on holidays. You live like a nun in this museum. Is this what you wanted for your life?" His words were brutal, and they were true. They struck a nerve so raw, so exposed, that I had no defense against them. "My life is fine," I said, the lie thin and brittle. "No, it's not," he said, stepping closer. "It's quiet, and it's safe, and it's lonely. I know because mine is too." He looked down at the coffee in his hands, then back at me. "I was with someone for a while. Her name was Maya. She was a painter. She was messy and loud and passionate, and she saw right through my bullshit. She scared the hell out of me. So I let her go." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Because I see the same fear in your eyes," he said, his voice dropping to an intimate murmur. "The fear of feeling too much, of wanting something you're not supposed to want." He was too close. His perception was too keen. He was seeing the parts of me that I kept hidden even from myself. Later that day, in an attempt to restore some semblance of normalcy, I suggested we sort through some of the old boxes in the attic, a task I had been putting off for years. It was a mistake. Surrounded by the dust and ghosts of his childhood, the intimacy between us only deepened. He pulled out a photo album. He flipped past the photos of his own childhood, past the awkward family portraits with his father and biological mother. He stopped on a page near the end. It was filled with photos of me taken shortly after I'd married Thomas. In one, I was on a boat, my hair whipped across my face by the wind, a wild, joyful smile on my lips. I looked like a different woman. "I've never seen you look like that," Daniel said, his voice hushed, reverent. "So, free." I stared at the photograph of the woman I used to be. "I was younger then. It's not about age," he said, looking from the photo to me. "It's about this." He tapped the image. "This light in your eyes. Where did it go, Caroline?" I had no answer. That night a fuse blew. The house was plunged into darkness, a sudden disorienting blackout. My gasp was sharp in the sudden silence. "It's okay." His voice came from the living room, calm and close. "Breaker box is in the basement. Do you have a flashlight?" We descended the rickety wooden stairs together, a single weak beam from my phone cutting a path through the oppressive darkness. The basement was damp and smelled of earth and forgotten things. As I held the light for him, he fumbled with the rusted latch on the breaker box. Our shoulders brushed. My breath caught. "Sorry," he murmured, his voice a low vibration in the dark. "It's fine," I breathed. He found the right switch and flipped it. The bare bulb overhead flickered to life, casting harsh, unflattering shadows. We were standing too close, our proximity exposed in the sudden stark light. He didn't move away. He just looked at me, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. And in that moment, in the damp, cold basement of my husband's house, I knew I was lost. The fortress had been breached. The days that followed were a torment. We moved through the house with a shared, unspoken secret, the air crackling with it every time we were in the same room. The pretense of our stepmother-stepson relationship was a thin, tattered veil that could no longer hide the truth of what was growing between us. It came to a head on the 5th night. We were sitting on the back porch, the cool night air, a welcome relief from the suffocating tension inside. I had a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, but I was still cold, a deep internal chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. He turned to me, his face serious in the pale moonlight. "I have to leave tomorrow," he said. My heart plummeted. "Oh, okay. I can't stay here, Caroline." His voice was ragged. "I can't be in this house with you and pretend that I just want to drink tea and talk about my feelings." "What do you want, Daniel?" I asked, my voice trembling. He took my face in his hands, his palms warm against my cool skin. His thumbs stroked my cheeks, a gesture of impossible tenderness. "I want that woman in the photograph," he whispered, his eyes boring into mine. "I want to see that light in your eyes again. I want to make you feel alive." It was a confession, a declaration, and it was my undoing. I leaned into his touch, a silent surrender. When his lips met mine, it was not the frantic, desperate kiss of our near misses in the dark. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was a kiss that tasted of shared loneliness and a deep, forbidden understanding. It was the most honest thing I had felt in 15 years. He pulled back, his forehead resting against mine. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. But I couldn't. The word didn't exist. All that existed was the fire he had started in me, a fire that was threatening to consume us both. I didn't want him to stop. I wanted him to burn the whole damn fortress to the ground. We convince ourselves that the lives we lead are the lives we have chosen. We mistake safety for happiness and silence for peace. We build walls of duty and propriety and forget that a fortress is also a prison. But the heart is a wild thing. It cannot be tamed by reason or locked away in a gilded cage. It yearns for what it yearns for. And sometimes the most dangerous, most reckless, most ruinous choice is the only one that can truly set you free. If you've ever felt the silent scream of a life unlived, if you understand the terrifying allure of a connection that defies all logic, then you know that the most compelling stories are the ones written in the margins of polite society. For more explorations of the complicated, messy, and beautiful human heart, I invite you to subscribe to our channel.